Indian officials
let me go, please.
Indian officials have said that there are other countries that are buying Russian oil.
It's okay.
Like China, for instance,
It's
buys
okay.
more.
Yeah.
Why are you singling India out for these additional sanctions?
It's only been 8 hours. So let's see what happens over the next.
Sanctions
you're going to see a lot more.
So this is a taste of
You're going to see a lot more. You're going to see so much secondary.
India says that the U.S. imports Russian uranium, chemicals, fertilizers, while criticizing their energy imports. Your response to that, sir?
I don't know anything about it. I'd have to check, but we'll get back to you on that. Yeah, please.
Namaskar and welcome to Samvad. President Donald Trump, during his campaign trail, had promised to release Epstein files, stop all wars, and he was very confident that he'll be able to stop the Russia-Ukraine war in a day. So it's nearly 6 months since he assumed office, and Russia continues merrily on its way. Ukraine hits back, and now the whole anger seems to be directed at India, as if Putin was an Indian. So with the sanctions and secondary sanctions, everything in place, things seems to be going out of hand for the US and India relations. To discuss this, we have with us Ambassador Dilip Sinha, who served as India's head of India's United Nations Affairs during the Security Council membership. He was ambassador to the United Nations in Geneva. He is former ambassador of India to Greece and served in Pakistan and Bangladesh, and was the head of the Pakistan, Iran and Afghanistan desk in the Ministry of External Affairs. Welcome to Samvad, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, we have been seeing this Donald Trump behaving, it's not very diplomatic to say so, but very aptly, the only way to put it, like a bull in a china shop with India. It's been like an insult on a daily basis, as if he wants India to respond to those insults. And when asked about the US purchase of fertilizers and uranium from Russia, he says that he does not know. So he's raised tariffs on Indian goods up to 50%. China, which imports more oil from Russia than India, pays 30% as of now. Turkey, which is the largest importer of Russian oil in the Western Hemisphere and is a NATO country, pays 15%. EU imports more gas because India does not import gas from Russia, but imports massive amount of gas from Russia, pays 15%. And the trade between EU and Russia was $77 billion in 2024 compared to the Indian trade of $68 odd billion in 2024 with Russia. Now clearly, and to top it all, President Trump is now talking of secondary sanctions, and he has halted the trade talks. So this is very strange. I find it very strange because India-US relations have been building up over a period of time. So even US experts are baffled at this. So how do you see this whole affair, sir? Is it really to stop the Russia-Ukraine war because India is financing that war, or it is more about imposing his will on India and managing the foreign policy and trade relations with India?
Well, thank you, Mank, for having me in your show. You have very eloquently and very informatively outlined the problems that Trump has created for India, and all the data that you have cited shows that his behavior is very difficult to understand, and all America experts are baffled by his behavior. But it's not as if India is the only country he's targeting, although it's quite clear that he's targeting India very specifically. But his actions have actually, if you look at it, he has destroyed the global trading system as we have known it and as was created since 1947, when the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade was negotiated by 23 countries led by the US, which restarted global trade on a very small scale. There were only 23 countries that joined it, and that started the global trade after the Second World War, led by the US, and India was a member of it. And this GATT, the first principle of GATT was most favored nation treatment, which briefly means that whatever you negotiate with one country and whatever privileges or duty concessions you offer to one country, you have to extend to all other members of GATT. So this one principle became the basis on which GATT started slowly expanding. And then in 1994, it was converted into the WTO. And in the WTO, you got a dispute settlement mechanism also. So earlier, you didn't have a dispute settlement mechanism, but in WTO, second major progress took place, and that was that there was a dispute settlement mechanism. Now, the dispute settlement mechanism of the WTO had been weakened by Trump in his first term itself, because he refused to appoint or approve any appointments to the appellate body. So the appellate body became defunct, and then very slowly, the main body also became defunct. So today, if you have a trade complaint, you can't go to the WTO because there is no resolution there. But more serious than that is the most favored nation treatment on which GATT itself was based. Because now what he is doing is he's negotiating directly with each country. And it is not only India that was negotiating with him, every other country is negotiating with the US, which means they are negotiating bilateral deals, and Trump is imposing duty arbitrarily on whichever country he wants, and every country is accepting it. India is a relatively small player in the global trade. Even the big players like the European Union and China have lined up to negotiate, and they're accepting. So the global trading system, as we know it, is now a shambles.
But destroying the global trading system, as you say, sir, but is it not also a sort of a way to impinge on India's strategic autonomy, that you need to keep relations with these people, you need to keep relations of this sort with these people? So this is a direct assault on Indian sensibilities, I would say, because we are a very politically very vibrant country. It is not as if we are somewhere like China where whatever the party says everybody has to follow. So he must be knowing that India has certain red lines, and it is better not to cross those those red lines. So as a partner, we are not an ally as such, but as a partner, is it diplomatically expected that a friendly country will behave with another friendly country in such a manner?
Not at all, not at all. I mean, this is not the kind of behavior that heads of states of a major country indulge in. This is the kind of behavior that small countries indulge in or small leaders do. If you recall, when the election was taking place between Biden and Trump, the election that Biden won and Trump lost, at that time, if you recall, our Prime Minister Narendra Modi had gone to the US and given the slogan "Ab ki baar Trump Sarkar." But when Trump lost and Biden came to power, there was speculation that because of that campaign, India-US relations would go into a nosedive. But that did not happen because Biden overlooked all that had happened before in the election campaign, and he ensured that India-US relations rose above personal rivalries and personal misdemeanors into a larger nation-to-nation relationship. Because India-US relations, as you are aware, had nosedived in 1998 when India tested a nuclear bomb. Thereafter, we had the Jaswant Singh Talbot dialogue, in which very slowly India was able to convince America that we could have a larger relationship. And India-US relations started growing from that point until it came to the nuclear agreement under George Bush. And then India became a close partner, as you said, the United States. And then came Quad, in which we had a strategic partnership as well. Our global view, the world view, also started dovetailing with each other. So that relationship had been built on a bipartisan basis in the US and on a national consensus basis in India. So you had Prime Minister Vajpayee, then you had the UPA government of Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, and then you had the UPA government, the NDA government of Prime Minister Modi. So despite changes in personalities, the two nations continue to strengthen their relationship based upon their national interests and their worldviews and strategic interests as well. Now, this has been shaken, and it is not just that it is only with India that Trump is doing this. If you look at the US's closest relationship is with Canada. And look at what happened to relations with Canada. With Mexico, of course, with Mexico, there have been problems in the past. And Mexico remains an important trade partner of the US, and it's a close neighbor. It has only two neighbors anyway. So Mexico is a neighbor. That relationship has been jeopardized. And then within NATO itself, which is the alliance built by the United States of America after the Second World War to strengthen and to protect the Western world, especially Western Europe, that relationship has been shaken. And the West Europeans, are running around looking for ways in which they can protect themselves, especially with the Ukraine war going on. So despite the fact that these are very tense times for Europe, Trump has not spared Europe itself. Now, on China, Trump came to power. In his election campaign, he was targeting China as if China was the big enemy. And yet today, China is sitting comfortably because he has not imposed, in fact, the tariff he has imposed on China is now less than the tariff he has imposed on India, and it's equal to or just about or even lower than the tariff he has imposed on Canada. So, and all this because Canada started blackmailing America by saying that it would stop the export of rare earths and lithium, which are very critical minerals for the electronics industry of America. And so because China had that lever and it was able to use that leverage, it hit back at Trump, and Trump had to accept that. So unfortunately, we don't have that kind of a leverage to use against America. We have never built anything like that. So we have to take America's blackmail and pressurization. We don't have to take it lying down. But the fact is that we don't have anything to retaliate America with. America is our largest market. It's our largest foreign investor. It is our largest source of remittances. So it's a very important economic and trade partner for us. We have to protect this relationship until such time as we are able to build other markets, develop other markets, and build our own economy.
So you just spoke of Quad because during the election campaign, it seemed that the US policy under Trump would be pivoting towards the Indo-Pacific. Now they're not even calling it Indo-Pacific; it's become Asia-Pacific now. All their statements are pertaining to Asia-Pacific. So this it seemed that Quad was the natural organization which would be looking after Chinese adventurism if it happened in the region. But now with all this hullabaloo, I would say, and all the bad blood which is flowing, because India said, after all, is a very vibrant democracy, I'll reiterate, because people are very inclined politically. So after all that is going on, we had is scheduled to be having a Quad Leaders Summit in New Delhi, for which President Trump it's still happening. It's not been postponed or cancelled. But where is the Quad heading right now as you see it? And or has he given up on China, on countering China in the Indo-Pacific?
From what little I see of his policies and actions, I think he's focused only on trade. I don't think he has much of an understanding of geopolitics or any interest in it. He's interested partly in national trade and second, in his personal business interests. So if you look at his trade agreements, tariff agreements that he's been negotiating, he's been using both these, that is promoting America's exports, putting tariffs on countries which have a trade surplus with America. He's also forcing countries to invest in America. And from what you see of his conditions imposed upon Japan and the European Union, and perhaps certain other countries also, he is to decide where the investment will take place. And if you look at his personal actions within the country, he's filing cases against people and companies and settling them on payment to himself personally. So he's using his position in a very bizarre way to promote his own personal business interests and conflating that with the country's political business interests. On the issue of Quad, now Quad came up because of the policies of China. China's aggressive policies in its neighborhood. So the neighbors of China, especially Japan, Taiwan, Philippines, Australia, South Korea, to a certain extent Vietnam, all these countries started making a common cause with each other to protect themselves against China's aggression. And since the US is a major player in the Pacific, the US was also involved in this. Then you talked about the Indo-Pacific. The concept of Indo-Pacific came because Japan realized that another country in this region which has problems with China is India. And that is how Shinzo Abe brought India into the picture. And then the Americans coined this term Indo-Pacific because the Central Command a new command was created in which half of the Indian Ocean was combined along with the CENTCOM command. And they started using the term Indo-Pacific for it. It suited us because it brought us into this grouping of countries whose primary concern was security from China. So now, in the present case, it seems that since Trump is only focused on economic relations, and he has found, cannot bully China because of the leverages that China has over America. He thinks it is best to remain quiet with China. China also has the ability to cut deals because China has deep pockets. And I won't be surprised if China has already cut deals with Trump and his companies. And then there's Putin. If you remember, in the election campaign, he regarded Putin as a friend and used to scold the Europeans for fighting with Putin. Now, of course, he has put pressure upon Putin, but he's still meeting Putin next week, and we don't know what will come out of it. There might be a deal cut between him and Putin, and that might start a new set of relationship. For example, with Pakistan, there's a strong rumor that his friendship with Pakistan is because of this crypto or this cryptocurrency. And because Pakistan is playing ball with him and helping his company or his friends, or his son, I think, or somebody is involved in the cryptocurrency. Therefore, he is striking a deal with them. So these are things in which India is at a disadvantage because although we have something like 8 or 10, whatever, Trump towers coming up in India, I don't think we would be petty enough to impose a 50% GST on the Trump towers coming up in India because it doesn't have any investment from him, but he's making a huge amount of money by selling his name to this company. And people are paying a premium for the flats that they are buying in these Trump towers because it's called a Trump tower. But India, of course, I think has better sense than that and won't become petty enough to say, okay, all Trump towers will have a 50% GST imposed upon it because Trump is being petty with us. And we don't need to do it. But see the kind of behavior that President Trump is indulging in right now, singularly with India, but also with a number of other countries.
Sir, we might not be imposing 50% GST on Trump towers, but we already, Air India has a deal with Boeing, 570 aircraft delivery of 570 aircrafts. And then we have this whole lot of unnecessary, useless, I call them companies, at least health-wise, I would say that, sir, junk food companies, which have proliferated all over India. So we do have certain leverages, sir. Can we make use of them?
Yes, we can and we should, because these Boeing aircraft, actually, if I remember correctly, had been in the pipeline for some time because both Indigo and Air India are interested in buying Boeing aircraft. So we should certainly have used these as leverage, and I hope we put that on the table in the negotiation that we had with the US starting in February this year, and which seems to have got stalled now. Yes, we should, because we are putting in money, and we also have to understand that one of the points where I think I support Trump is that global trade had got distorted because of the continuously huge surpluses that China had been building up and the trade imbalance in the world. where China had a huge surplus for years and America had a huge deficit for years. And Donald Trump wants to address that, except that the deficit with India is relatively very small. We are the 10th deficit country for America. China is way ahead with all other countries in terms of the deficit. But Trump, being Trump, is now targeting India instead of targeting China. So we have to understand that over a period of time, a trade imbalance cannot be allowed to continue. So with America, since we have a large surplus, we have to address that surplus and we have to start buying more from America. At the same time, we have this huge deficit with China, where China buys only $15 billion worth of goods from us, while it is selling to us over $120 billion worth of goods. But that again cannot continue indefinitely, because what is happening is that we were earning our dollars from America and Europe and spending that in China to buy goods from China. Now, we have to understand that this cannot continue for long. Sooner or later, some people in America would have noticed it, that this trade had to be balanced. So we should have, from the very beginning, offered to America to show that we are buying more from America to address the problem. It may not happen in a year or two, but we certainly show that we are going ahead with this. The other area on which we had problems was agriculture and dairy. Now, again, these are very sensitive areas, but we ourselves have known that we need agricultural reforms in India. If you recall, some years ago, the central government tried to carry out agricultural reforms, but the farm lobby was much too strong, and the central government had to back down. So the fact is that the realization that we need agricultural reforms is there for quite some time in the country. Now, the advantage that we have with the Trumpian trading system is that it is possible to have, number one, there's no MFN now, so we can have a deal only with America. We don't have to extend that deal to other countries. And the other is that if we strike a deal with America, we can have what are called quantitative restrictions, which means we say, okay, we will lower the duty on agricultural products, certain agricultural products. Can be soya, for example, it can be some edible oils, which we in any case import from other countries. And we say that, but the quantity will be restricted so that the opening up of Indian agriculture takes place very slowly, and our farmers are able to adjust and their interests are protected. Because the fact remains that we have to not just protect our agriculture, we also have to make our agriculture more competitive.
True.
And this can only happen if we open up to external competition. If you remember, in the early 1990s, when we had the great liberalization in India, there was a lot of hue and cry in India. Our industry will collapse. Our foreign exchange reserves will vanish. Nothing of that kind happened. Our industry developed and became more competitive. So it is possible for us to have a calibrated opening up, even in very protected areas like dairy and agriculture, and slowly make them more competitive, which would help us. And this is the good time, because the global trade rules are kind of been set aside.
So we can use this adversity as an opportunity, is what you would say.
Absolutely, it is an opportunity for us, because see, when the WTO was formed, we opposed the WTO because we felt that this whole trade liberalization would expose us to global competition, and we would not be able to compete. Now, the fact is that we have competed very well in the global market. The very fact that we have such a trade surplus with the US shows that we can compete. Where we have a problem is with China, where China, with all Indian exporters accept and realize that China imposes all kinds of non-tariff barriers to prevent Indian exporters from exporting to China. And then the second problem is with Russia, where again we have a huge deficit. But this is a temporary deficit because Russia is selling oil to us simply because it can't sell to Europe. The moment the Ukraine war is resolved, Russia will start selling to Europe, and that source of oil supply will dry up very fast for India.
So Trump has always seemed very apprehensive of BRICS. Now he's picked up fights with Brazil. He's virtually picked up a fight with India. Although India has been mature, very mature, I would say, the reaction has been very calm and sober sort of a reaction, nothing overboard. He's picked up fight with South Africa. China is always there, but still not there. So is he, and Prime Minister Modi is visiting China. Suddenly, it's been decided that he's going to China after 7 years, and 5 years after Galwan. So is he not, on the other hand, I mean, strengthening BRICS in a way which could hurt American interests, hurt the American dollar?
I don't set much store by BRICS. BRICS has very little to show in the last 20 years that it's been in existence, apart from the new development bank based in Shanghai, which has a portfolio of about maybe 40, $50 billion, which is a good thing. It is funding projects. India is also a member of it. But otherwise, BRICS has been a lot of talk, but very little substance to it. Yes, Trump has mentioned BRICS, and people talk about a BRICS currency as if currency is a small thing that can start any day. You can start like a new development bank. A currency is a very complex thing. The only international currency in the world today, international in the sense that that a group of countries have got together to issue that currency, is the euro. And the euro came after a very high degree of integration among the West European countries before the euro could be launched. So there is no possibility of a currency coming up in BRICS. Yes, the members of BRICS can conduct trade in a local currency. For example, in the case of Brazil and China, they're talking about trade in yuan or in the Brazilian real. But that is possible when the trade is more or less balanced. If the trade is unbalanced, like it is between India and China, then one country will pile up reserves. So if we trade in yuans, then where will you buy the yuan from? Or if we trade in rupee, then China will pile up a huge pile of rupees as reserves. And what will it do with those rupees? If you remember way back in the Soviet Union days, the Soviet Union had piled up about 30,000 crore rupees in India. And then when the Soviet Union collapsed, Russia wanted that money back. But the question was, at what rate of exchange do we give that money back to Russia? In the Soviet Union days, there was an artificial rate of exchange for the ruble, which was very high. But after the Soviet Union's collapse, the ruble also collapsed. So those 30,000 rupees, if converted at the market rate, would have made very few rubles or very few dollars. But we agreed, of course, to an artificial rate of exchange and a higher rate of exchange because we wanted to preserve our relationship with Russia. And therefore, we paid a much higher amount. But we still had to convert those rupees into hard currency to pay back Russia. So BRICS has been a target by Trump, but he's targeting Brazil not so much for BRICS as for Bolsonaro. Bolsonaro is the former president whom Lula is persecuting because Bolsonaro had persecuted Lula, so it's an internal dispute within Brazil. And since Trump supports Bolsonaro, therefore he's taken umbrage at what Lula is doing to Bolsonaro. I don't think BRICS is much of an issue over here, because had BRICS been the issue, then he would have taken action against Russia and China, because these are the two major powers in BRICS. China, in fact, is the major mover and shaker of BRICS. The new development bank is based in Shanghai. And China is now the largest mover and shaker of BRICS.
Sir, what do you make of the Prime Minister's forthcoming visit to China? What is on the plate?
Well, I hope on the plate is our trade deficit with China. Because now that we are all talking trade and trade deficits, we have to address our deficit with China. Because if we are going to lose the American market, not lose, but substantially shrunk market in America, where will we earn the dollars from pay for the imports from China? We have to start planning for that. And we have to tell China to buy more from us. It is just not enough for China to say, okay, we support India. To support India, you must start buying from India. And it's the same with Russia. Our total exports to Russia are less than $5 billion. Now, it's not as if Russia does not buy goods. Russia buys a lot from China and from other countries. Russia has money. But doesn't it buy from India? The textile market, the leather goods market, the shrimps market that we lose in America, why don't these countries buy from us? We have to diversify. That you can diversify to small countries which will buy a few dollars worth of things, or you can diversify to the big markets like China and Russia. and ask them to replace the markets that we are losing. I hope that is what we're going to discuss with China, because that's what's important for us right now. We will have a foreign exchange crunch coming up as our markets in the US shrinks. And we'll have to look for the ways in which we can pay for the imports from Russia and China.
Sir, one final question. What is the way ahead for India? I mean, you spoke of a certain things about agriculture, but that is not the all. So what is the way ahead for India, given the challenges Trump is throwing up on a daily? Because this does not seem to be subsiding very soon. It's not going to end very soon. So what is the way ahead? What are your suggestions?
Well, our major trade problem is from China, not from America. Even if we lose half the market in America, suppose we lose, as some people are calculating, about half our exports will suffer. So even if you reduce it to half, America will still remain our largest buyer by far. So it will still remain the most important market for our goods. Whereas with China, our imports are so high that the deindustrialization that has taken place inside India is because of cheap Chinese imports. Our manufacturing sector has been hollowed out because of Chinese goods coming in at cheap rates. Our businessmen find it cheaper to go and buy from China, come here and put a label and sell it in the Indian market than to manufacture here. This is that we have to start doing, because we have to revitalize our manufacturing sector. At a time when the rest of the world is moving towards automated manufacturing, we don't even have manual manufacturing. All those manufacturing centers have vanished in India. So we have to protect our manufacturing sector. Let's first rebuild it so that our trade imbalance is addressed, and we are able to diversify our exports. Today, our exports basket is very limited. And look at our exports to the US. Most of it is in software sector, in services. And then in manufacturing, of course, some electronics, etc., are now being manufactured. We have the iPhone coming up, which is a very good thing. So it is this kind of thing that we have to start promoting in India to ensure that we have a diverse basket of exports which we are manufacturing, and we don't then become dependent upon other countries. Today, people say that we cannot have a quarrel with China because if China stops exports, China already has stopped export of rare earths to India. Plus, we are dependent upon China for imports of semiconductors, APIs for our pharma industry, and a host of other electronics for which we are dependent upon China. So this kind of dependence on strategic items is not healthy for a large economy like ours. And of course, then we have sectors like agriculture and textiles and dairy, where we have to become a lot more competitive and a lot more realistic, because a lot of our agriculture also impacts the state of our soil and our climate. So our water security. All these are very important factors that we need to address and start looking at the long term to protect not only our economy but also our environment, and become a little more clever, or a little more intelligent or sagacious in the way we handle our resources, in the way we create employment for our people.
Sir, while we have been talking of multilateral engagements and multilateral approach to diplomacy, it was observed in the recent years that we were shifting towards the Western Bloc. I mean, save apart from Russia buying oil, most of the business was being done with the Western Bloc led by US. Now, suddenly, Trump has thrown everything into a tizzy. And the politically volatile atmosphere in this country makes it very difficult for any political leader to find room to maneuver. So I believe we can only wait and watch as to how things evolve without getting very inflammatory about everything. I hope you agree with that statement, because that is my concluding statement, sir.
I completely agree with you. There is no need for us to be vocal all the time. We must remember that there was a time when China was growing in the 1990s. And China's philosophy at that time was hide your strength and bide your time. In international negotiations at that time, and I was to participate in the negotiations in those days, China would remain absolutely quiet. China would not speak up because China was developing. It knew that it needed markets, it needed investment. It could not antagonize people. We are today in that same state. There is no need for us to take on countries. We have to promote our own development first. Once we have done that, then we can certainly start speaking up. It doesn't mean that we have to sacrifice our vital interests. In fact, we have to protect our vital interests.
True.
But we have to identify those vital interests first, intelligently, and then take steps to protect those national interests. Our interests should be, of course, protecting our agriculture and dairy farming, but at the same time, making it more competitive.
True.
Similarly, our manufacturing needs to be protected and to be made more productive so that our economy becomes more competitive.
I would like to conclude on that note, sir. Thank you for sparing time and so much knowledge with us. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.